Guns are pricey on their own, but bullets are plain ridiculous. It depends on the gun, but 2 full magazines worth of bullets cost almost the same as a decent gun. Heck, giving your entire office dropping safety procedures is probably cheaper than keeping enough bullets in stock for them to use. The cost is so high, it outweighs the benefit by a metric ton.
These are lines Roland says during the reception of Full Stop Office in Library of Ruina, and this whole chapter basically serves to explain why nobody uses guns in the city. It's interesting to think about the reasoning. Of course, to those who keep up with the lore of the series, you'd know it's because the head imposes a tariff on bullets in order to ensure kills are more often up close and personal, so that people who kill truly feel like they've taken a life. You may also know that this is pretty obviously a band-aid that was added to the story later on, as Lobotomy Corporation doesn't abide by these rules very hard. Sure, Mio acts stingy towards L Corp paying for all of R Corp's bullets, but then you look at one Sin story and see someone casually discuss how a local deer hunter used a shotgun, which would imply in current lore that this random country Joe was either super duper rich and willing to splash cash like nobody's business on deer hunting, or that he was illegally manufacturing bullets without a license, which would also be extremely costly. Off to a great start. I've already gotten immensely sidetracked by the logistics of guns in this series. This all serves to explain why so many characters never use guns, and why in Limbus Company, ammo units are so limited in what they could do. At least, they were. Until we saw the rich man. Today, I hope to go through the timeline of ammo units in Limbus, and potentially use them as an easy way to explain how numbers have become inflated over time and something power creep. This is far from my first video which touches on power creep, so I'm gonna get the whole inspirational message out of the way because I already ended the Earl King video on the whole speech that I don't really mind power creep. I am not here to critique the meta by discussing how American I am. I'm really only here to put these numbers under a microscope and analyze them, as well as the community's reactions to them. All of this to say, you're watching an allergy jelly video. Ammo is an effect that has existed in this game since day one, with the launch units LCCB Ishmael and R Corp Heathcliff both being ammo-based. Since then, we've gotten 5 more ammo units, as well as an ammo-based ego and both an ID and ego for magic bullets, which is classified as its own status, separate from ammo and unique ammo. Don't worry though, we will be discussing it in this video because it's just ammo with extra steps. I do find it worth mentioning though that technically Magic Bullet is considered in the code as a completely different thing from ammo. Likely because instead of starting with a value and spending it, you're starting with no value and building up to spend it. So it's just charge. To start from the very beginning is to start with the man himself, R Corp Heathcliff. It's strange to think that we now live in an era where he's just kinda okay, when for millennia he reigns supreme as the meta's king. Only half a year ago he was topping lists, and now he resides comfortably in like B tier for most. Heathcliff played a very simple game, and that was do big damage but rely on a finite number of bullets to do that damage with. And although it's strange to say this, he was really the odd one out in terms of ammo units. On launch, people generally assumed that Heathcliff was just what ammo units were gonna be. Big damage, limited ammo, that's the MO moving forward, because that's both how Heathcliff worked and kinda how ammo units worked in Ruina. When, in reality, they more often ended up being like the little guy that stood behind Heathcliff, LCCB Ishmael. If Heathcliff is an ammo unit, then LCCB Ishmael is a unit who just so happens to have ammo, being able to spend a maximum of 5 ammo per cycle. You will rarely run out of bullets on her, seeing as she starts with 13. She was a decently common pick for Railway 1, although that was mostly because ID choices were really slim pickings back then. And when run there, she could typically run out of bullets somewhere around the 10 turn mark. Although she isn't bad, what she really needed was higher speed. I could totally see her fulfilling a niche akin to 7 Yi Song, but she just can't due to a middling 2 to 6 speed roll. She's a Tremor support unit that was released during a time where most people didn't know what Tremor did, and yeah, that's the long and short of it. Her kit has the pieces to have been a pretty good support unit for that point in the meta, but her speed sours the deal. She's meant to get in fast and either do paralysis on her skill 1, attack power down on her skill 2, or a whopping 5 fragile on her skill 3. But she just can't make the most out of that when she has really not good speed rolls. 7 Yi-Song rolls a 5 to 8 on speed, and Heathcliff rolls a 3 to 9 on speed, and those guys have similar purposes to LCCB Ishmael. So it just doesn't make any sense that they gave her a 2 to 6 value on speed without giving her either increased damage or defense to make up for it. Which brings me to the strangest part of it all. I think they were trying to make her a tank. They gave her above average health, and when Uptie 4 released, she received aggro on her skills. But by doing that, they made her worse. This is not a unit you want aggro on because she is just too flabby for it. Even if her health is, again, above average, that doesn't mean it's anywhere near good. And her clashing power is also just fine. Then her kit looks you in the eyes and says, by the way, I gain extra aggro if I'm out of bullets, and you end up just sitting there and wondering where this unit went so wrong. Trying to have her fill the niche of a tank was not the go, and as a consequence, we have yet another launch unit with an uneven kit to set on the pile. However, she was completely worth getting into, as how she uses ammo in comparison to how Heathcliff used ammo is how ammo in general would be used for a bit moving forwards, as seen in the next 2 ammo units to release, Pirate Gregor and LCCB Ryoshu. LCCB Ishmael, I can still see you running out of bullets on her, but LCCB Ryoshu and Pirate Gregor made the odd choice to cut down their bullets by almost half. Then have it so they only use 1 bullet on their S3. This means you have to go through a minimum of 7 skill cycles on them in order to run out of bullets. I think they were trying to play off of how battles were getting longer and units were beginning to get more skill slots as a result, but it just didn't really work. These two don't feel like ammo units, they feel like Ishmael did, units that just so happen to have ammo. Except now, I am not being hyperbolic. Now, I think Pirate Gregor has been a wee bit talked to death at this point, so I'll leave him at, yes, at the time he was released, he was the poised lead guy. The numbers he could reach with that 1 bullet were unheard of at the time. And although he may seem underwhelming now, know that we can really point to him as one of the points where power creep began to subtly set in. Meanwhile, LCCB Ryoshu is the 2-star support unit of all time, who's meant to build up poise on herself before unleashing her S3, which benefits greatly from crits. These 2 units serve as 2 sides of the same coin, Gregor using his self-sufficient poise and unique status, Unjust Enrichment, to build up to spending that 1 bullet on an insane blast of damage, while Ryoshu uses her self-sufficient poise to build up to her spending that 1 bullet on doubling, rupture, and tremor on the enemy. I like these 2 units, and I find their gimmick neat, with Gregor being the DPS, while Ryoshu plays a niche but really interesting support role. But people don't talk about LCCB Ryoshu because of the neat idea behind her kit. As nicely as she slotted into a Rose Banner team or a Masochist Wet Dream, none of this compares to the strange case of her support passive. I don't think anyone at the time could see how important her bench passive would end up being. A passive which on the final use of a bullet applies 50% of the total damage dealt by that skill as bonus damage after the attack. And also gives poise or something, who cares? Like, okay, put it on Heathcliff and he'll get some pity poise. Or put it on Pirate Gregor and get an insane payout on his 7th bullet, which I promise you I will get any turn now. No, really guys, any turn now. I'll finally see it. I'll finally see it happen. Yet with the turn of the next Walpurgis Nacht, this passive would become the meta way to run Magic Bullet Otis, and would later lead to the game having to draw a fine line between how the passive read skills versus how it read individual attacks, in order to prevent it from easily becoming the best bench passive in the entire game. This brings us to the unit that's technically not an ammo unit, the aforementioned Magic Bullet Otis. Now, this is another unit that I feel has been talked to death. While she didn't revive or revitalize Burn in the long run, she did do a few chest compressions on it, and she does look very cool. But what I really need to get into today is the Magic Bullet status, her version of ammo. In contrast to all other ammo units, Otis begins with 0 bullets and has to build up her count through the use of her S2, S3, or guard. The count maxes out at 7, and when that happens, her S3 will roll a max of 40 and gain an attack weight of 7, before bringing her back to 0 bullets. And the game makes a point to note that this is considered spending the last ammo, meaning that when paired with LCCB Ryoshu's passive, what was initially just a very good payoff to all that setup becomes a straight-up godly payoff to all that setup, helped by her own passive, which gives her upwards of 20 poise before an attack. To lay this all out for you, this means that her S3, on a good day where she procs poise and the enemy has 30 or more burn, she will have a roll of 40, an attack weight of 7, and she will deal 50% more damage with the skill, with 30% from the listed effect of her S3 and 20% from poise, as well as a bonus 50% of the damage applied afterwards. Does this require a lot of setup and patience? Yes. But is it worth it? 100%. These 5 would remain the only ammo units for a while, up until the 4th Walpurgis Nacht, where we were introduced to Solemn Lament Yi Song, and with him, Reload. This was it. This was the point when ammo fully changed into what we know it as today. If the problem before was that ammo units just didn't use enough ammo to even feel like they had guns, then the problem now was that they used way too much ammo and they could now reload infinitely. I already spoke about Solemn Lament itself at length in my Earl King video, so don't mind me, I'm just gonna touch on what this meant for bullet units moving forwards. First of all, this set a standard of reload existing as a mechanic. Yi Song skirts by on the simple logic that, well, he isn't using real bullets, they're ego bullets. Of course they can reload infinitely. Well, nobody else could reasonably afford doing the same with regular guns. And yeah, technically speaking, Otis was the first reload unit, but I think I already explained why it was justifiable in her case. And the game seems to agree, since with the release of Solemn Lament Yi Song, it had to alter how LCCB Ryoshu's passive worked. I guess they realized that allowing a 50% boost to a skill's damage whenever the last bullet was used would be extremely stupid on a unit who pretty often uses all his bullets on an insanely powerful 4-coin S3 before reloading and repeating the cycle. So, from September 5th onwards, the passive applies 50% of the damage done by the individual attack the bullet was used on as bonus damage. Originally, the passive would read the full skill of whatever attack used the last bullet, and use 50% of all damage dealt by it, but now it only reads the 1 coin which used the bullet. On paper, this doesn't sound like much, especially in the case of Otis, who only had 1 coin on her S3 anyways. But when you start to break down the numbers, you realize just how intense of a nerf this was, because the attack weight of her S3 is 1. Despite having an attack weight of 7 when it procs Ryoshu's passive, that is an effect of the skill, not the attack. So what does this mean exactly? If we only take into account the base damage that Otis does with her S3 at maximum bullet count, then it would be 30 damage to 7 enemies. So with Ryoshu's passive, it would apply a bonus of 105 damage. But now, the passive doesn't read the 7 enemies, it just reads the base 30 damage, so it'll only apply a bonus of 15 damage. I think this was a necessary evil. As sad as it is to bid farewell to such a fun strategy, it was either get rid of the magic bullet nuke or let Solemn Lament Yi Song be better than Ring Song, who was already questionably powerful. Walpurgis Nacht 5 was all about Full Stop Office. Hey, remember them from the start of the video? Their whole gimmick is guns, so we got handed an entire gun-based banner. And you'll also remember from the opening that the reason why bullets are so limited is because they're really expensive. Well, one of the Full Stop units is Hong Lu, who is canonically rich enough to swim in a pool of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck before breakfast every morning. And because of that, it's implied that this was the good end timeline for Full Stop, because Hong Lu just bought so many bullets that they could get the job done and reload. 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 Okay, I'm making more of it than it is. As badly as I want to equate Hong Lu's bullet fund to paying for gotcha pulls and then make some sort of funny lesson about how whales always win and we shouldn't even bother, Hong Lu turned out to be a more balanced unit than I expected. At least on his own, we'll get to that. See, his whole gimmick is that the more ammo he spends in an encounter, the more damage he'll be able to do, and when he runs out of bullets, he has the ability to reload once. The second piece of his gimmick is that, unlike what you see all the time with Heathcliff, where once out of bullets he can clash but he can't do any damage, Full Stop Hong Lu will instead perform melee versions of the attacks which inflict none of the statuses but allow him to keep up with longer battles, unlike Heathcliff. But wait, there's a secret third gimmick, and that's what turns him from a balanced DPS to the second coming of Heathcliff. And much like the return of Christ, Heathcliff here has to die for our sins before we can be blessed. That's right. We've arrived at our final ammo ID. Circling back to the man who started it all, we can see he's grown out his hair and picked up a few more F-bombs. Stick with me here, because the unit explanation ride is about to get even bumpier than it already was. I hope you know I wrote that line and then I went to bed and proceeded to have a stress dream about a ton of ammo units with super complex kits coming out, and then I had to rephrase that entire line and edit half of the script, and maybe I should lay off the mirror dungeons. To first explain Heathcliff on his own, he begins with 10 ammo and primarily uses single coin attacks. And alongside the 10 bullets, he gets a singular unique bullet, Atelier Logic. And I must stress that Atelier Logic bullets are so powerful and expensive that we have only seen them used once in this entire franchise prior to this unit. And the character who used them was a color fixer. We don't even get to see the color herself use it. We see someone else using it after looting it like it was a Fortnite gold scar. To put it simply, his kit is built around this one bullet. No shade to him, he is incredibly powerful even without it. But when I say that in my experience, I haven't seen his S4, which uses this bullet, do anything but one shot, you will understand why I need to stress to you the potential of this unit. And I think he knows it. If I'm being honest here, you should avoid taking an S1 of his unless you're relying on a good backup unit to take his place, as his S1 is both weak and uses 3 bullets, and Heathcliff will actually retreat upon using all of his bullets. So when S1 hits the bottom, that's the time to use his evade. This evade is stupidly cracked and nobody talks about it. First off, his passive works by applying bonus poise to allies and himself, as well as pierce power up to himself whenever he goes a turn without attacking. So yes, bide your time. Bide your time, because even with a quick look at what his S4 does, I think it's easy to see why it's so busted. And you only have one shot. Because yes, like Hong Lu, Heathcliff here can actually reload his regular ammo, but not his special ammo. And second off, I can't put this off any longer. I have only described a part of both of these units, and yeah, I'm playing up their strengths for a hoot and a holler, but genuinely, if you have both of them on the same team, it is insane the things they can do. Hong Lu gains the ability to have Heathcliff perform follow-up attacks on the regular. If Heathcliff is on the field, then Hong Lu's S2 has the ability to have Heathcliff use his own S2 as a follow-up. And if Heathcliff retreats or is set as a backup unit, then all hell breaks loose. Close enough. Welcome back, Heathcliff. I missed this so much you don't even realize. So have Heathcliff set up, have him die for your sins, and then embrace the meta's new overlord named Unbreakable Coins with tears in your eyes and a dead wife at your bedside. Because yes, while Heathcliff is in your backlines, he'll give the enemies back shots in the form of Unbreakable Coins added on to Hong Lu's S2 and S3. And they do a lot of damage. And that evade that Heathcliff has, the one that I mentioned earlier, the one that's a pillar of his playstyle, yeah, that one. If Hong Lu's on the team, then he'll perform a follow-up attack. It's not a very good follow-up attack, but free damage is free damage and it costs 0 bullets. Throughout this video, you have watched me describe a handful of gun-wielding maniacs that function nothing like the one who started it all, with bullets as an underused afterthought or their own mechanics that function nothing like the ones who came before. But now you see what humanity has come to, what guns have come to. Now, frankly, in a post-manager of La Mancha Land world, I cannot bring myself to look you in the eyes and say these guys are the best of the best. But man, if they're getting close, and man, if they're fun to play. And with that, we come to this video's footnote, those being the Ego, Fell Bullet, and Magic Bullet. Fell Bullet Yi-Song does nothing, so he doesn't count. It has no ammo-related effects, but it's really funny, so I don't know, video at some point maybe. Fell Bullet Heathcliff's a quickie. If he lands a kill with a critical hit on the second coin, he'll get a bullet. He can only do this upwards of 3 times an encounter. It's honestly such a blink and you'll miss it effect, but the idea of it is funny, I guess. Otis's ego variant, a magic bullet, has more meat on its bones, basically looking the identity in the eyes and saying, "Setup? What's setup?" The skill's effects are determined by how many magic bullets Otis has saved up, which is why it's recommended you use this ego in tandem with the identity. The effects are as follows and apply to both the awakening and corrosion. 0 bullets, get a bullet. 1 bullet, deal more damage. 2 bullets, deal more damage, hit an additional 4 enemies. Do no damage to the original target, but give them 3 paralyze. 3 bullets, deal more damage, hit 3 additional enemies, inflict attack power down, and burn. 4 bullets, deal more damage, hit 3 additional enemies, raise the original target's stagger threshold, inflict 3 fragile. 5 bullets, deal more damage, hit 4 additional enemies, inflict offense down and defense down next turn. 6 bullets, hit 6 additional enemies, raise the original target's stagger threshold, reuse the skill for every 7 burn on the original target a maximum of 2 times, and the skill works a lot better if it's the corroded version. 7 bullets, change the target's pierce resistance to fatal, deal 200% more damage, deal an upwards of another 200% more damage depending on how much health the enemy has already lost, and then Otis dies! It does some other stuff like inflicting burn and dark flame and just Let me rest. I'm tired. So there you have it. You do not understand how immensely grateful I was that the Hey Show pack did not use guns. Manager of La Mancha Land video coming at some point. Unbreakable coins will break my balls. Get your open carry license. Put the muzzle in your mouth! As always, I've got to say thank you to my lovely patrons. My $5 patrons are up on screen, and my $10 patrons, Khan, Arcanon, Dist, Rain, Aryaverse, and Fish Gaylord. As always, thank you all for your support. There's a bit of an echo in the background. I am moving at the moment. Yay. But I will see you all in the next one.